nuclear arsenals, get rid of all 18. It is completely weapons of South Asia, at least completely abolishing nuclear weapons, sovereign ability, funded away to the rise of nuclear weapons, convertible with abilities, all outside and all returning for sure, to establish nuclear companies, building measures, arms, control, being true to being current, and in a for escalation goes due with only elimination of arsenals, checkers, if you have a preemptive counter strike, any reduced by enemy, Hawks, and the service to this, because I 19, any defense wrote in the desert, and enemy, the future depends on the need counter, the ability of the other to reprise the nuclear force, they need to build new accurate missiles, and larger ability to launch their and nuclear force, ability to win, and use or Hawks, and terminal arsenal, with a whatever for striking, and also to armor, and nuclear Hawks, and more excited over single mass and second discussion period, long running tension skirmishes for rapid escalation of conventional conflicts, so to Warrior 19, any Hawks on air long running an incentive reduced by causing carbon and nuclear war investigator world like nuclear rush with the countries and the then this is what the country nuclear military special conflict nuclear military military powers and nuclear conflict as the possibility of nuclear exchange remains military war question nuclear as it will be on the leadership will domination of the political level of the series of the is on water delta which is in the conflict and there is some new major retaliatory strikes hardened nationalism Hawks and inability to counter the Indian army nuclear escalation never the side of 18 unexpected justification for Indian army political pressure on Indian military response to retaliatory attacks on very military bases also was in military facilities escalating terror situation parallel to the major retaliatory attacks targets in Pakistan attacking Indian military Indian army targeted Pakistani army was attacks reaching danger proportion of Pakistani military organizing the Indian attacks and Indian strike close to Pakistani military retaliation for Pakistan unable to counter superior Indian defense forces for the battlefield for weapons and massive retaliation for this aggression unbalanced and uncertainty arms races international actors can't check that's McDonald 19 as soon as the carbon into retaliation there's a clear shake even though Pakistan facing the air power nuclear power and the views on sharper waters the western countries were occupied by the combined two whenever willingness to raise the states and included by western countries to intervene in nuclear distributed but decide against the was able to no longer developing the type of the no longer weapons were preventing the retaliation he was also incredibly allowed to increase the rise of China releasing more freedom to new vibrance the US seeking Pakistanis for peace over the television with the living abilities of pressure on Islam Pakistan and developing the nuclear this is our development military pressure for the reduce nuclear weapons Pakistan government is struggling to stabilize the economy and fifth is Pakistani officials Article 370 controversy and TV establishment ships through nuclear escalations like 2019 Pakistani doctors and Pakistani rebellions anybody who's on the fifth how like international supreme proposition Article 370 Pakistani establishment running nuclear war for the nuclear government genocide of Pakistan and nuclear nuclear has survived by the help of the country's establishment that Pakistan will advocate the terms of the nuclear future in favor of the original party representing the one representation of Pakistani national Pakistani establishment because the views itself have lost in 6 is for 7 Pakistani believe that English represent Indian overcoming shortcuts escalation escalating on 19 Money occurring because of very logical visual business rights. There shows absolutely nuclear battery, any logical talking into reason for terrorists with the 7,000 Indian civilians Pakistan. Emphasize the ability to use nuclear weapons of power to gain India's superior forces in access to greater infantry, has access to greater infantry control of missile capability and cruise missiles and he's have the ability to just not Pakistan near medium determines from the insect capabilities likely as only arms with the possibility to charming strike major Pakistan early consideration of for striking Indian overcoming lead to exit counter strike even if not. And 7th nuclear submarine strategic ambiguity, weak communication and devolution of men exponentially increased risk of miscop. That's only 18. Pakistan uses United nuclear weapons to take into account the Indian nuclear travel increased by so war control major paranoid opposite Pakistan as far as submarine launching with the putting warhead putting in the fleet chain of command means risk of accident nuclear war increase exponentially to weapons that already been disallocated cases are one way something that's not known to hold the detective for submarine something meant to be able to grab a nuclear strike and devastate second strike once the first strike is launched going to be held for either side yes they each side of the release in tower arsenal population centers and nuclear between the Indian population in tower that Johnson 19 nuclear exposure percent of the 36 million tons of nuclear plus 30% of some countries also nuclear 1/3 of global Indian China precipitation drops in the United States with 50% Indian and population is over 125 million but all these temperatures within the ice age of masturbation and extinction nuclear fallout creates ice age and masturbation of star 15 or when nuclear weapons with mass extinction of extinction and event of underground movement use true clothing to direct grow to work with a call with the vice president of the destroy those in the blocking the link for the ice age for decades for any nuclear war really earth is essentially uninhabitable and even limited to nuclear war really kills hundreds of millions of millions of 2 people on the team even when nuclear weapons explosion can do a great deal of damage with KT with people 700,000 100 KT 2 million fatalities because of the dead population war with 50 fatalities can lead to fatalities in World War II and war with 100 KT 1 to kill 2.5 times as many the fatalities could occur in a single week the framing the standards maximizing spent holding its keeper to base over creating nuclear arsenal for additionally one is active specificity 8 aggregation every policy better based on the those inside injuries speak action to levels of fear there's a policy could be ability for moral actors to effectively out of another rule of persons or constituted persons and he was saying moral conditions with other theories and opposition to nuclear arsenals is essential to disarmament and education can effectively stigmatize arsenal and nuclear arsenal and split over story 17 education is empowering the humanity to disarmament process led to the NP the TP and WTP and the framing nuclear weapons but they close humanity by the intervention by military document powerful the change of paradigms with a lot of education of the impact of nuclear weapons the determines the disarmament and the to a large education process that an emotional movement that expert society gathering knowledge of the university nuclear detonation to save the ability to trust the humanity to make emergency that would result the underview 1 is 1 year 3 8 napkins of advice 19 engage 8 data making innovative possible to use wrong and bigger 1 issue for their theory and substance to valid application shape and decision key to check BCs no market things include 6 and 8 and 2 short ranking to figure out possibilities competing into 1 year in terms of better recommend to depending on how more time is new 2 and 3 reaching over time committed with devastating for the way or F comes in bigger percentage in 1 year than the 1 is between there's more at least but no voter back in time only issue has having voted multiple layers procedural fairness of the voter now way bonus. This in interest good basis upon the plea exam and so will the right to be necessary standing activity is probability they can alter subject to the back to rights including the only impact of all these friends inside who would see an internal impact of limited for the indefinite research and need to listen necessary to access all their education and RBI's able to get insurers for violation of the first and next I think twice before skewing 1 year since in shells and other split in the 200 always on reversibility because every shell has a substance we can't get back and because reciprocity TC to output the applicant access makes T structurally appear without the RPI.
Very good. Does extinction come first in your framework?
Yeah.
Okay. Why tensions with Pakistan, India and Pakistan have been high in the past. Why is now uniquely key?
We isolate a couple of really unprecedented political factors. One is the fact that there's hardline nationalism on both sides.
Hardline nationalism has existed since the 2003, since the 2000 Kagro conflict. Why hasn't it escalated?
It's
before?
particularly high now because of different internal changes in India and Pakistan's own political dynamics, and the fact that currently nationalist leaders are facing a re-election that also runs congruently to other forms of tensions that are escalating.
What are those internal political changes?
Changes in the Pakistani establishment from people who would previously have nuclear restraint.
Where does your evidence identify changes in the Pakistani political dynamics?
There was this, it specifically talks about this one sort of political leader who has been replaced.
Who?
A guy called something Quasi who previously exercised restraint, but then that will have nuclear restraint.
So your evidence, your reason for why it has not escalated before and now escalates is literally because one article just identifies
that's not the only reason.
Leadership.
That's just a part of it. If you want us to go through all of the internal links, we think that all of them are more likely now. The other fact is that there's currently different forms of arms racing and nuclear submarines.
Okay, let's go through each of the internal links.
Sure.
Preemptive counterforce strike. Your evidence, or actually, let's talk about the terrorism argument. So there have been multiple terrorist attacks before. Why hasn't India retaliated against Pakistan through nuclear capability?
Right now, both sides have the political will to try to retaliate against each other. That's our other argument about changes in establishment. And if you look at the Kurzaniak evidence, it talks about how India has previously adhered to international precedent but doesn't have the will to because tensions are escalating. Everything builds on each other till it becomes inevitable.
I'm confused as to why this is different from previous crises.
A couple reasons. First, we also have this idea of the Article 370 controversy, which quite literally pushes them to the brink because it shows that they're outright hostile with one another. There's also the fact that there's currently arms racing in the form of things like nuclear submarines as well, which previously didn't exist.
Nuclear submarines have existed in the past, but I want to talk about this arms racing argument. What is the implicate? What is the scenario for escalation when international actors don't check?
When international actors can't check, it
what does
means
this
that
mean, I guess?
the McDonald evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, it means that other countries who previously could have some sort of a mediatory role between the two countries don't have that ability anymore because there's no political will to intervene.
Why wouldn't they try to mediate?
A couple independent warrants. One is that Britain is currently consumed with its own political turmoil over things like Brexit. The US has lost international credibility. China has frayed relations with both countries, so it doesn't have influence.
Oh, crap. Sorry.
That's good.
Okay. I'll send out the dump. One off, please. Sorry. How are you, Sam?
Yeah. Is it sent?
Yeah.
I think one was just
I think this also went to spam.
oh yeah.
Security is a psychological construct. The scenarios are conflict or products of paranoia, only targeting the symptoms of project our violent impulse on the other. They would back 91 to threat nuclear knowledge and to understand what led to self-destructing behavior. Understanding the enemy system requires psychology science is clearly the scientific basis for regarding humans as aggressively we have a real choice to attempt to explore psychological wisdom about the bad my enemy is real. This does not address one's contribution to that threat. We have not known how we created that enemy. We never see our enemies motive with that job objectivity. We're not deciding through critically about how enemies are selected. Historical actions the first victim work begins in the mind. Individuals surrender responsible leaders psychological mechanism. They impel individuals to lack killing image of the enemy participate in acts of violence and the affirm his endeavor of non-proliferation is a veil of good intentions, maintaining colonial power dynamics and the guise of establishing peace. The ordering of the international system only reproduces their impacts. 17. Operations are hard to be the most lasting and most significant because they constitute the world in which within which international politics takes place. Non-proliferation emphasizes the hierarchical dimension of international society, creating a category of have and have not. These may be on equal material footing. They are certainly not in terms of their hierarchical ordering. Ideas long actors responsible nuclear states that do not fulfill their nuclear weapons. There are persistent doubts. All countries can eliminate the acting responsibly because their responsibilities are hierarchy differentiated as periodic of what places he has in relation to the non-proliferation. So to maintain a specific world order, non-proliferation exists not because it effectively solves the problem of nuclear weapons, but helps to constitute a certain rendition of nuclear weapons that serves a global ordering function by focusing on principles neglected power bargains that underpin international regimes. An essential mark of politics is power, but unless placed in a specific historical situation is unimaginable. Non-proliferation functions as a veil of good intentions of obscuring the sort of power bargains, upholding the regime, and their Indo-Pac arguments stem from flawed realist depictions of South Asia. 9. The media indulgent framing and reigning, but renewed fears about the Indian subcontinent has been observed for over a decade. War will not be the result. Frenzy over nuclear war seems the result of superficially knowledgeable about the history of Indian-Pakistani relations. A feeling compelled to follow the most sensationalistic story and being brainwashed into thinking that their only way to respond to attack was the American way of war. Both countries, war would be a disaster. India has been building relations with the world. Attacking Pakistan would not improve India's reputation. Pakistan couldn't win a war since 1999. Both have made efforts to create people-to-people connection, decreasing sense of animosity. And this is from the app McDonald 19. Well, only fool would be able to predict what is likely to happen next. It's safe to say that all the old rules and assumptions which guided relations between India and Pakistan are being written. These are uncharted waters. Their construction of India as a newly dangerous power is grounded in flawed assumption of Indian nuclear potency derived from colonial stereotypes. Combining 19. India's nuclear pathways in the last few decades showcase the conventionality of the nuclear model, far from an unconventional model. Difference that rests on uncertainty generated from the absolute nature of the weapon. India accepted a model based on numbers, technology, and organizational routines. The conventionality comes as a surprise only because of the dominance of the normative, cultural, and institutional dysfunction narrative. But given every other model that India has embraced political government, development, security, conventionality should not come as a great surprise. The argument that Indian nukes was only partially credible to begin with. Had procedure recognition had been critical driver. India could have cashed the prestige check after 1998. Would not have invested billions into building a triad force. We were only surprised these developments because key academic narratives have framed a reality. Narratives compromise data and interpretation of that data. The interpretation of the data is always biased. Makes any narrative constructing narrative become reality binding. Create echo chambers that reflect it, and that reflect their own make-believe worlds. The current nuclear developments in India are warning of this effect, and their periodic projection keep us on the brink of war, enables extinction of the world of validation. Prove the better, be their best methodology to deconstruct security and epistemology. Hollander 3. 9/11 constituted a decrease in anxiety provoked by living in a culture undergoing deterioration, manifesting the version of democracy, racial discrimination, environmental devastation. 9/11 permitted respite by stimulating reconfiguration of psychological forces. Ununited people stood against aggression. The enemy was no longer complex internal forces, but an identifiable enemy. The relief came within the projection of aggressive impulse on an external enemy. Anxiety is more easily dealt with when it is provoked from the outside groups, and to be paranoid and their aggression is projected on an enemy. Imagine that discourse presents the conflict between civilization and terrorism, but the civilization is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Those who represent a reveal idealization of themselves and a projection of the consequences of a U.S. foreign policy. Onto the other must be an island, altruism, hijack people's fears, and converting them into a passive possessive species annihilation. Leaders disavow their aggressive motivation, the distortion of language, and serve to disguise the horror of a nuclear war, and are part of making it likely and vote negative to interrogate cycles of enemy creation, reframe risk to a focus on the real towards systemic probably impacts instead of erasing infinite magnitudes. This can create a fissure in dominant narratives that make war inevitable. Biles 3. Lincoln plays an important role in matching the other, that how wars are put into action by individuals, splitting into a friend and enemy, relieves the psychic tension, destructive impulses, projected guilt onto the enemy. The problem is how to create a mentality that will direct the word to recognize their projections for irresponsible psychic acts based on positive challenge way in which the state can manipulate our responses. We should displace violence in harmless ways where identifying with the other. We can reformulate psychic mechanisms as a projection. The inner world has an important role to play, but here in developing identification not as a means of damaging the other, but as a means of empathy. We should not project it into our nation so that we follow like sheep. The psychic just maybe evolutionary, understanding the other so that we can reduce their motivation to kill pieces as a state of mind. Case India's planning land invasion of Pakistan now that caused a major conventional land war, but Pakistan nuclear weapons deter invasion and war, decades of empirics, and also answers all of their internal links. However, to 2020, given the toxic relationship, it's easy to imagine a scenario in which another crisis erupts. The pressure on Modi to respond forcefully would be greater. The Indian army has been planning a conventional military operation that would conquer Pakistan. Turkey users leverage to negotiate political settlement. The reason is that they could be launched so quickly within days. They would Pakistan equators and convert the invasion limited attack. What is the Pakistani forces? After the introduced Indian forces would redouble their fights to take Pakistan throwing more armor and more air power. Given the apparent friction of major conventional land warfare, they could escalation for the conventional to the nuclear level. We avoid Indian military claims over Pakistan could have disastrous conflict. The argument for stability is based on the empirical war and the logic of nuclear deterrence. It provides clues as to how New Delhi and Islamabad might behave from 98 to 2016. India rapidly with caution because of nuclear deterrence and cruel conflict. The Indian military operations strictly limited to Twin Peaks crisis. India is considered refraining from ordering conventional military options to Pakistan. Despite years of planning for proactive options, that Prime Minister ruled out a conventional response, opting for diplomatic pressure. But New Delhi and Islamabad were conscious they avoid escalation that might lead to using nuclear weapons or nuclear deterrence impose any ambitions like conventional use of force and conflict escalation, providing decision makers with compelling incentives to not engage in conventional conflicts. Nuclear weapons limit New Delhi's options for strikes and nuclear weapons deterring nuclear aggression and conventional invasions and nuclear symmetries will not just about the Indian Pakistan from nuclear conventional aggression, which also impacts about removing deterrence spurs Indian aggression, which means inevitable. Their evidence is 9 months more recent than ours, and no cross-ups. Dougherty 2020 that Indian Pakistani nuclear doctrine comprises to make a strong case for mutual deterrence. This hybrid has been for more than 2 decades deterred India from taking advantage of conventional superiority. That absent deterrence, if you were to suffer another terrorist attack, a large conventional war might be as the best bet for punching that need. Challenging to imagine any scenario in which Pakistan would start a nuclear conventional war with India. India says that it will not use nuclear weapons. First, it would be an unwise Pakistani leadership which has said that even if India did not retaliate, decision makers in Islamabad are aware that there is risk of escalation. That nuclear change to be significant. These uncertainties play around the minds for decision making, making it very cautious. Even limited conventional invasion draws in U.S., China, and Russia goes global. And nuclear by 2003 that any stretch of argument that India should be prepared to fight a war that allowed a limited conventional nature to respond to terrorism and teach me that war between India and Pakistan could draw on other nuclear weapons. States like Pakistan appeals to China for help after an Indian conventional attack affairs with Chinese involvement in India turns to Russia. The U.S. urges China and Russia to stay out, but Beijing and Moscow are unable. Washington must do everything to avoid nuclear crisis. While American troops on the ground in Pakistan will be trapped, this would be unacceptable to Washington. I'll say the nuclear submarines. Pakistan no accident deterrence works. Also 14 create Pakistan create robust, effective, secure, and credible nuclear deterrent. Commanders and their subordinates were constrained by strict rules of engagement. Nuclear weapons have helped deter more than just nuclear war in South Asia. South Asia presence of nuclear weapons is evil source of strength. Deterrence capability in the region. Hard to hit means good. Nuclear second strike deterrent, which means it prevents counterforce capabilities.
Status of the alt.
Conditional.
Okay. Let's go to your deterrence argument. Isn't conventional war already happening right now? So how's it impact still?
Well, conventional war isn't happening right now is our argument. There are not large conventional strikes that are like happening against.
Where does the 1NC read any sort of terminal impact to conventional war?
What do you mean?
What's the impact of conventional fighting?
People die.
Okay. Go to the critique. If we prove that the app scenario is likely or based in reality, does that take out your link?
No. Our argument is that the presentation of how like India and Pakistan like make decisions is in fact like colonial in nature. Second, we say that the affirmative is a form of threat construction.
How does the alternative like deconstruct colonialism?
Sure. The alternative like interrogates things like enemy creation, which means that like the fundamental assumption of colonial projections onto India and Pakistan assumes that India and Pakistan are now enemies to be feared, and that they construct each other as threats because of the way that colonialism
If our evidence
operates.
comes from officials in India and Pakistan, then how is this a Western conception of the two countries?
Well, our argument is that for example, your evidence also like derives like from for example media sources, and for example the Krasniak evidence, and other other pieces of evidence in your app.
Officials from India and Pakistan.
Your evidence is not exclusively from officials in India and Pakistan, and to say so is absurd.
Quick question: where does the critique ever have an author from India or Pakistan?
I mean, for example, like the Compani evidence. Hold on.
This person goes to Cornell.
Yeah,
I'm asking where you have someone from India or Pakistan making a descriptive claim.
Yeah, I'm sure. Like the Moody evidence explains, like someone who has spent time in India, and
someone who has spent time in India. Okay, that's
no. They
how does
they
is
operate
the alternative a floating
it's
pick?
fine.
No. So can the app happen in the world of the alt?
It's not a floating pick.
Okay. Can you explain this argument about counterforcing?
Sure. Which one? Like which argument about counterforcing?
The Barman card.
I didn't read that evidence.
Oh, okay. Did you just end it at the first 1NC?
No.
Wait, where'd you cut the 1NC? Or did you?
I read Offsol.
Okay. that one?
1C7.
Oh, okay, thanks. Oh yeah, what's your nuclear submarines answer? It just says that this card is from 2014, and it just says that there are rules. How does
Sure,
this
the
take up
evidence
this calc?
essentially indicates that there are in fact submarines are in fact like robust, effective, and secure. There are not, and that commanders in this were straight by strict rules, which means that they're like your evidence identifies like chances of miscommunication. Our argument says that they are constrained by rules which prevent those types of miscalculations.
Okay. So you read everything down to 1 in C7?
No. I read 1 in C like 0, and then I read 1 in C7.
Okay. Okay. 238 left. I'll send it now. Yeah, it should be sent.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi's been slow.
Oh. Can I stand?
Yeah.
Everyone good? Orders, case K. Impact into the border skirmishes, escalating conventional war airstrikes that result in nuclear warnings and nuclear missiles by limiting useful incident deterrence argument for the case of like nuclear wars obviously presented more widespread effect their impacts in conventional that's on because having energy was only nuclear subs evidence from 2014 doesn't take into account triad modernization, which is all one see evidence and then the 3-0 case events means you're going to affirmative bad feels at 2019. That is not a regulation of report also matters that are because about the levels of communication when you letters and only the person and non-state actors service attack that should the international community have enough time to stop the strike. Go to the case first. Case of privatized accidental impacts of any possibility of political change of material difference in interpersonal massive horrible and temporary bills for the rest of so people death from termination disease and ICU even the world is bad they should get to make this decision for billions to be able to run but the value of the world of the balance but for the better debate choose equal run and access to the access to the world which avoids one year restart conceded then debate can alter subjectivity and the fairness not as first coming out of the one coming out of the 1AC which means the EU preferable perm to growth perm to the alternative mindset perm to the alternative for the theater consequences of the planet against the impact of the the advent causes the world of balance determined of the planet is a good idea first is the development education and awareness about nuclear arsenal to the impact drive disarmament of the broader coalition that can challenge military talk with the favor of pregnancy and devastating humanitarian impacts of nuclear is concerned about the development of the TPNW. They're all does nothing to prevent nuclear catastrophe wounds. Lots of most people die, which means the case outweighs them and the lyncher. This is a Eurocentric conception, which means you should automatically reject the AIDS more recent not take Indian Pakistani leaders at their official at their word for this. They will use nukes and their impact is obviously more synchronization because their actors actually cause their impact and know that ourselves the advocate literally works at the University of Pakistan or others are either from countries or sites South Asian experts and some securitization of the no custodian of the should be able to see that bad permeability as essential parts are key to response to making the only thing they care about, or because have a chance of hurting the normal lighting, the ultimate discrimination, and of the post reconstruction and claims about always open to reinterrogation of the structural claims correct. That doesn't mean we can't do everything, ever do anything about it. You can think opioids are capitalists and overprescribed, but still go to the documents and it's better to accommodate different assumptions that might be contradictory and ideals of ethical purity, filled for positive and embrace rules, and that's 6 and 15. Positive distributed in a supportive measure to give competitive advantage to Pakistan on all measures of enhance its own nuclear capability, helping to right Pakistan has interfered in attempts to report in Pakistan as a property of the district nuclear maneuvering the threat of India deals with not under the rules of what I do. The deal with the world has existed in India to the 418. Those has been so pronounced in India, the region is viewed largely a concept of the new rules around and Mr. has a theoretical base of state centralism and threats are not neutral when we target against people of color first because of proximity to cities, because of racism, of policymaker security analysis prevents it, such in 2015. If he was used as nuclear transforming infertile pigment in the connection of black British of American nuclear zone, there would be an instruction that the schools integrated not concerned with survival of the world. Leaders now have nuclear issue, they brought in the black British movement to African considered greater stake as increasing urban concentration of African American cities, greater risk of nuclear war and the security dilemmas of robust and intellectually sound explanation complex legislation that Jacobson and Thompson in 18. The security dilemma model highlights itself to defeating remote property security seeking seek survival and security suspicion and fear are mutual resulting in simple paradox states are pure defense only one and security seeking 19 according to the other security dilemma counts the unfortunate fact that the policies of them to increase the state security have the effect of decreasing the other states and cumulative power each party's increments are matched by the others. Go to the alternative first conditionalities go to issue 8 punish shots with whatever was made argument for the world doing different good means conditions which precludes taking advantage of strategic interacts and contradicts into his clash incentivizes to an article for these covered opposite we do whatever responsive regarding the opportunity to go in depth on the nuances of their position that is that means it also turns all of their engagement off under the critique because it's a critical advocacy outweighs because multiple rounds period on outside the debate solve all their education impacts but a clash only because in round 3 is the research comment disincentivizes average because the best offensive response require too much time investment that makes that makes conditional condition that content makes strategic, which means we never actually get to nuance comparisons between the world of the affirmative and the alternative and just solves all of their options by allowing sufficient negative flexibility while preserving whatever strategic decision making you should couple and even though they only read one conditional advocacy because it's critical in nature means we don't actually get to enjoy all of the benefits of why they read the advocacy specifically in the debate space. You can cross by all of our conceded paradigm issues that they have already functionally conceded that fairness comes first, which means it's just a question of them trying to leave defense under our interpretation. You should err heavily affirmative. You should err heavily affirmative.
Any reasons to reject the team or the debater other than condo?
Condo and then arguments on the K.
What reasons to even if we don't go for the K or if we do go for the K?
Even if you don't go for the K, the Eurocentric perceptions argument.
What is that argument?
It's the 3-point on the K. It's that all of the authors and everything come from like a Eurocentric perspective, and there's no officials in India and Pakistan.
Our authors are Eurocentric? Is that it? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Standards on condo were Stratsky, Clash, okay, and then what was the dispo-solves argument?
It allows sufficient negative flexibility, but the 1 year still has strategic decision-making ability that's easily predictable early enough in the round.
Wait, what was it again?
It solves because it allows it solves like negative flexibility and being able to read different advocacies, but it still allows the 1 year to have the ability to kind of create a coherent strategy early enough in the round.
which of your authors are from India or Pakistan?
Do you want me to go through all of them?
Like, I don't. Okay.
They'll be the case. Okay, we're the same.
Are you sending them?
There's no cards. Oh, no, that's good. Yeah. Oh, okay, cool.
Conventional conflict between India and Pakistan is being planned but will be avoided due to nuclear deterrence. The affirmative eliminates India and Pakistan's nukes, which gets rid of any reasons India has for not exercising its far superior conventional capabilities against Pakistan, which ensures invasion. That causes conventional war that draws in other major powers like China, who Pakistan seeks for protection, Russia, who India seeks as an ally, and U.S. troops already in Pakistan get caught in the crossfire, drawing in Washington and leading to nuclear war. Drawing is supercharged because post-act, Pakistan and India look for nuclear protection, which they only get from major powers. The dissent always in turns a case before the case turns a dissent. One is time-proven probability. India and Pakistan have had high tensions for decades now, but they cannot identify a specific scenario or crisis that triggers nuclear escalation. There was no extension of the case done in the 1AR. There received 2 lines that did not have a warrant between the 2 powers, whereas our evidence makes it clear that India can and will launch a large-scale conventional attack against Pakistan as soon as nuclear arsenals are eliminated. That's the Dougherty evidence. Second is magnitude. The nuclear war scenario we read involves 3 nuclear superpowers with larger arsenals than India and Pakistan combined, which worsens the extent of the nuclear winter created, or at least increases its rapidness and intensity. Third, it terms war. Nuclear deterrence prevents conflict between India and Pakistan, but elimination ensures conflict. And fourth, the framing issue of the round is that you should view deterrence theory as a counterplan. If you vote for the app and they're right about their theory, they stop India and Pakistan from launching nukes, but nuclear war between China, Russia, and the United States still happens because India and Pakistan have conventional war, which they don't claim to solve for, so you can vote negative on presumption because they don't have a unique impact. Also, only voting negative has a risk of solving nuclear war entirely by preventing India and Pakistan from fighting at all, which means that it's try or die for the negative. They massively mishandled it. One, the case outweighs argument. We have the same impact of nuclear war to draw in, which means that you can just cross-apply all of the overview. It basically means that we have the same impact. It's not just we have a conventional war impact and they have a nuclear war impact, but we both have nuclear war impact, which is what they fail to understand. Which means that you just cannot vote. Affirmative here. The second argument about the nuclear submarines. We'll address all of the deterrence claims. One, they did not make a sufficient extension of the case paper. Their only extension was that tensions and border skirmishes escalated to conventional wars and airstrikes, which we'll address here. Nuclear deterrence between India and Pakistan is historically warranted and proves that the possession of nukes prevents violence between the 2 countries. The affirmative's robust claim about the nature of conflict in nuclear states that mandates disarmament requires robust evidence which they lack. India and Pakistan specifically have had 3 major wars prior to acquisition of nukes and only limited conflict since. Their claims are all built off psychoanalyzing leaders, fear-mongering by news outlets, and overblown fiery rhetoric, whereas ours are backed by empirical analysis. India. In the 1999 control conflict, India mounted a potent military force to retaliate against Pakistan, but feared nuclear escalation of a conventional conflict, and thus operations were explicitly limited to the Indian part of Kashmir. In the 2001 Twin Peaks crisis, Indian leaders seriously considered launching an invasion of Pakistan, but decided against it due to nuclear deterrence. In 2008, after the Mumbai terrorist attacks, India's PM ruled out a proactive conventional response despite having the option, said pursue diplomatic pressure out of fear of escalation. In 2016, after the Uri attacks in Kashmir, India used surgical strikes that were carefully calibrated by defense leaders across the LOC to avoid miscalculation. In 2019, India airstrikes on Balakot were portrayed as defensive measures by the Indian government rather than retaliation against Pakistan, and there's no risk of a Pakistani conventional nuclear attack. India claims NFU, which means that even if Pakistan has certain suspicion, decision makers in Pakistan know that they're better off not trying to test such a doctrine, and even a conventional war with India would be damaging enough because of India's immense conventional superiority, therefore preventing a Pakistani conventional first strike. In 2016, Pakistan simply didn't acknowledge its special forces raid. In the 2019 crisis, Imran Khan, Pakistan PM, called for bilateral talks and unilaterally released the captured Indian pilot, reverting to cross-line of control firings. And third, the Imran Khan Imran Khan literally said, with these weapons, can we afford miscalculation? This means that the only scenario for conventional war and nuclear escalation is the Indian attack that we described at the top. They have their nuclear submarines argument. They don't address the warrants behind our argument, which says that they're constrained by specific contingent or stringent rules, which means that there's a very low chance that they actually get used. And also, Pakistani subs are good. They use a second strike capability that Indian first strike can't hit, so that deters war. No reason why Pakistan having a defensive capability leads to war. That's also independently answers Pakistan use it or lose it, because subs enable secure second strike. Their evidence, 2018, nuclear submarines have the advantage of being able to survive a nuclear strike, and there's no sub accidents, not a single incident despite the Kashmir turmoil. The mad fails argument. This card barely meets the threshold for a warrant. They highlighted 10 words that don't make a coherent thought or analysis. Above proves that deterrence work, and yes, red lines, and yes, understanding. All of their arguments just assume that mad fails because India and Pakistan don't meet their 3 criteria, but our analysis at the top proves that they do. The arguments on the independent voter. One will concede their framework, which means that case outweighs because it's an existential thing. It's an existential threat, and that comes first, which is their analysis at the top. But also, we use analysis from Indian leaders and Pakistani leaders. They also don't have all Indian Pakistani authors, which proves that there's just a size threshold, and it's ultimately a wash, which means that you shouldn't grant them any weight on that. Condo conditionality is good. We get one conditional ad. CA is critical thinking for strategic one-error choice and adaptation information. And again, ideological flex. Condo is keynote topic with 0 disaggregation except the deterrence side, which should frame all of their arguments are not specific to this topic. Allows for rigorous session, which first competitive equity, ideological education, and also it tests core arguments from different viewpoints. Those agitational depth and pulse speaking, even if they win that fairness matters more in a vacuum, the impact at magnitude is so great that it outweighs the time skew is not unique to conditional axes. We can just read infinite dissets or topicality, proves that they can't solve their abuse claims. We need to default in our offense. Also, Dispo doesn't solve any of their offense because we could just pick any condition, and also on the time skew arguments or the conditionality arguments, one conditional axis solves all of their offense because their app is already designed to harm this go, which means that they only need to respond to one advocacy. All of their arguments on what chapter choices proceed sources of one error, the strategic interactions, the critical thinking for practical axes because the inability of strategic opponents, the negative flexibility, assets, parameters, make and break, whereas the negative force of adaptation, deficit, non-advantage, keys, strategic repertoire, axes, terms which are functionally conditional axes, since I have proved that they're less desirable in my axis to multiple terms, they get all limited strategic flexibility, just can't have them in multiple angles. So, Connor's cases test the applicant the same reciprocity. The applicants to pick the plan where the negative force respond. They should be able to defend their applicants multiple strategies since they have a strategic advantage. The negative multiple strategies, the applicant plan test may have multiple angles. Their intercourse negative strategy in the 1 where the app already has a perfect strategy from partner which screws negative flexible negative strategy.
2. Can I borrow your time? Or are you using your phone?
Yeah.
Oh, are you timing now?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You said 2.
224.
2.
Case DA. Information that they actually aren't winning any sort of case events on the case page, which means that if it's a question of whether they decide solved, you should probably err affirmative because they've conceded multiple different scenarios for escalation. The first one is our nuclear submarines argument. They're only a piece of evidence. They try to use or classify this as apart from 2014 that literally just goes as far to say as there are rules, but this doesn't account for current arms racing and triad modernization, which make miscalculation basically inevitability. They have conceded that the case is just an inevitability question, which means we always are going to outweigh the affirmative probability if there's even a question that the deterrent to dissent doesn't work. But go to the dissent proper first. Deterrence fails. There's a litany of what I say words. One is lack of strategic. We're saying either have a hold back on retaliation due to on airstrikes or tolerate terror attacks to the nationalist bases that are currently only there in the status quo. B is triad modernization, demolition, commanding, inexperienced trigger having commanders and lack of underwater communication when the exponentially increases the risk of miscalculation. C is first strike upgraded arsenals and monitoring and NFU backtracking that was proven in the 1 year means use or lose pressures caused in overconfident nation tissue. First use or lose is only an independent word for escalation that was conceded coming out of the Cuban Arctic conventional war is already occurring because Pakistan is weak revisionist data that will secondly increase aggression. India will wreck their military. Pakistan pushes back with tactical triggering full Indian escalation. They've also conceded a award for the McDonald evidence that proves that it's the first time that one nuclear armed power has an airstrike and which shreds all previous deterrence precedent. It means that none of their empirical words check will go to their empirics argument first. The conflicts like Article 370 and the fact that themselves are currently modernized and takes out the fact that previous things takes out the argument that previous checks apply that was conceded coming out of the 1 year, which means that you should err affirmative on specificity. We have highlighted specific instances where escalation is rising now in the status quo and it's just becoming an inevitability question. They've also considered all of our arms racing arguments and establishment shifts. It proves that Article 370 means that there's currently wide hostilities between Indian Pakistan over things like religious and ethnic conflict and ethnic tensions, which weren't as pronounced in the past. But they've also considered our argument about the Jaish terrorists, which means that tit for tat is reaching dangerous proportions insofar as that terrorist attacks are continuing to occur. India's not gonna hold back because of other forms of conflicts. On the subs argument, we're winning this argument. We're totally winning this argument. First, their only argument is this there are rules argument from 2014, but we're also winning pre-delegation boards. It takes out all their second strikes up first. Pre-delegation and new capabilities like nuclear subs cause pre-delegation underwater because they aren't getting good signals. That also means that it's unreliable and unstable because local commanders can just decide, which means it only takes one. Even if Pakistani central control knows conflict isn't happening, it only takes one person to decide. That means that even if the theory of deterrence is true, we can't check back for every single individual actors because nukes are pre-delegated, which means that even if deterrence is politically sound and correct, and the establishment believes that if you grant a negative argument, it still doesn't check back against the fact that it only takes one person to currently launch a nuke even from a field and not from a submarine. First, go to the land proper. First, they're trying to win this drawn argument, but there's no terminal impact. This articulated in the Cuban or Western countries aren't drawn in. They conceded the McDonald 19 evidence coming out of the 1EC, which means that it comes lessly prior. That is conceded argument. That means that other countries have no incentive to interfere with Indian-Pakistan relation, which should terminally check back for their escalation argument. But the case also outweighs our probability because they've conceded just an inevitability question. They say that you should view deterrence as a counterclaim, but they are right. That's all of the Jose evidence. We're going to be extending every single word. First thing is constant probing of red lines and no rational actors because people are making really inflamed nationalist sentiments against each other. And red lines are currently being approached with things like airstriking another nuclear nation, which means previous conflicts, previous texts.